I rarely ask this, but why not subscribe? Come on, there's lots of good stuff here. Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard. In this video, I'm going to give you my full review of the Odroid Go Advance from Hardkernel. Now, if you haven't already seen the video in which I show you how to assemble this unit after you purchase it, you can see that in the link below. To reiterate a point from that video, I purchased this with my own money. It was not provided for free to the channel, they didn't give it to me for review or on loan or anything goofy like that. So all the opinions you're about to hear are entirely my own. With that out of the way, let's get to it! Yes, so satisfying knowing that I put this together myself and it actually works! I'll put the specs up on the screen for you while I talk a little bit about the device. In a nutshell, you'll find a nut. You know, as long as the shell wasn't already cracked open. But to provide a brief overview, the Odroid Go Advance is more powerful than a few of the pre-assembled Chinese devices that were released late in 2019. Having said that, keep your expectations in check, my friends. You're not going to be playing many of the more advanced systems on this handheld. Strain! Let's talk about input. The Odroid Go Advance has a D-pad, an analog stick with no click, 4 main action buttons, 2 shoulder buttons total, and 6 multi-purpose function buttons. It's not too big a deal that it's missing the extra set of shoulder buttons since we have so many function buttons. Missing the second analog stick may hurt for a few specific games, but I can live with it. What's it missing? Well, dedicated brightness and volume controls. Most OS builds let you either adjust the volume with the function keys or hotkey combinations or both. They typically also let you control the brightness in the options menu. For ports, we've got our micro SD card reader on the back of the device. On the top, we've got a headphone jack, an expansion port, a barrel jack style power connector, and a USB 2 host port. I haven't messed with adding games onto a USB drive, but I do know that some of the OS builds will let you do just that. The screen is a 3.5-inch LCD, and despite this, it still looks pretty good, and the viewing angles are excellent. The only disappointment here is that it's 320 by 480, so the resolution is quite low, and it's also not a touchscreen. 640 by 480 would have been a big help in running a few of the more advanced supported systems, and frankly, I'm a little surprised they didn't go with that resolution. Now, as you can see, the Odroid Go Advance is a chunky boy. But that thickness is great if you've got medium to large hands, as you can really feel like you have a good grip on the device without straining or cramping your hands. Still, it's not the most ergonomically designed handheld system you'll ever see. It's just the way it's made. You can't change that. Give him a break already. The D-pad feels pretty decent, though I'd have preferred they use softer plastic for it. The main action buttons definitely feel cheap, but they function just fine. The shoulder buttons are decent and the function buttons are fine. I will say I'm a little concerned about the durability of the function buttons. The type of material they're made from feels like it'll waste away over time, but we'll see. The analog stick is also just kind of okay. It's on the small side and feels a bit loose. The Odroid Go Advance isn't made from the best materials, but you know what? For $55, it's perfectly fine. Some minor tweaks to address a few of its issues could have made things a lot nicer. Still, what we got is what we got, and it's not bad. Oh yeah, it's got one speaker. Again, it's okay. Perfectly serviceable for most games, and it can get plenty loud. Clarity is alright. Stereo speakers, of course, would have been better, but space was limited on this thing, so I get why they went with mono. Now the question you've all been waiting for. How does it perform? That's actually a bit tricky to answer. Right now, I've found about 5 operating system images that can be installed on the Odroid Go Advance. I've personally tested 3 of them, and I've tested a lot of games on it. In general, I can say performance is pretty good for the price, but don't expect to get anything near the level of a considerably more expensive device like, say, a GPD XD. Now, I wish I could say that this runs just every old system fine with no hassle. You know what? I can say that. It just wouldn't be true. Between the multiple OS images and multiple emulators for the same system within some of the OSes, your experience is going to vary a lot, even on some simpler systems. For example, the MSX2 is an 8-bit computer platform with capabilities fairly along the lines of the Sega Master System. Some emulators on some OSes won't run MSX2 games at full speed and are juddery messes. For example, it runs very poorly on Batocera, but on emulate, the same games run completely at full speed. Another reason for this is some OS builds are using different emulators and they don't all give you a choice of multiple emulators for one system. You'll find similar hiccups with quite a few other systems. Take the Game Boy Advance, for example. Or for any other reason. Anyway, I tested a few GBA games on Batocera, and some were full speed, while others had loads of stutter and slowdown. I switched to emulate, and at first the games had the same problem. But then within emulate, I changed the emulator I was using and finally got full speed performance out of everything. For more advanced systems like the Dreamcast, N64, and PSP, most games won't run at full speed, regardless of which emulator you use on which operating system. You'll get a few that manage to run without a hitch, but most of them have pretty severe problems. Basically, plan to be able to play PlayStation and below at full speed, but you'll probably have to mess with different OS images and emulators to accomplish even that. I don't think it's a huge problem since the Odroid Go Advance is meant to be tinkered with. It's the whole point of the thing. But for the sake of convenience, it'd be nice if there was an OS which defaults to the best options to run the most games as well as possible. Now, the elephant in the room. Getting OS images and games onto an SD card. This is a review, not a guide, so I'm not going to go into a lot of depth here. What I will prepare you for is that after you flash an OS onto the microSD card, which you can easily do in Windows, getting the games and BIOS files on the card is another matter altogether. You see, once the memory card is formatted and the OS is installed, Windows won't properly see the ext4 partitions that are created on the card, and that prevents you from both reading it and writing to it. Yes, you can get some software like the Linux file system from Paragon to see the card and transfer files, but that's kind of a mess and comes with its own learning curve. Also, that's paid software, even though it does have a free trial. Here's a tip on that one. If you use the Paragon software, you have to mount the drive, transfer your files, and then unmount the drive. If you don't unmount, the Odroid Go Advance will not see the files, and you'll likely lose everything you spent all your time transferring to it. Now, if you've done the mounting, transfer, and unmounting, and you still don't see the files on your Odroid Go Advance, you may have to go into the Paragon software, unmount the drive, and then verify it, which usually will fix the problem, but may take a very long time. Another alternative is to transfer ROMs using a computer that has Linux installed. After moving stuff in Windows and dealing with a lot of headaches from Paragon, I just decided to stick a spare drive in my computer and install Ubuntu onto it. I have used Linux lightly in the past, so I was comfortable doing that. I didn't want to set up a dual boot since that can also be a hassle, and that's why I just installed it onto its own drive. And no, I'm not doing tutorials on all that stuff, I'm just letting you know what I personally did. After I had Ubuntu on there, transferring games to the memory cards became much easier. For Batocera, I did have to manually go in and change the permissions on the drives I was using, but I didn't have to do that at all for emulate, I could just drag and drop files. Which brings us to the interesting question of how exactly to review the Odroid Go Advance. Who is it for? Who might get the most out of it? These aren't really easy questions to answer, but I'll try to do so as briefly as possible. The Odroid Go Advance is really for someone who likes to tinker and has at least a modicum of hardware experience. You don't need to be an expert, but you should be familiar with how to handle small, sensitive, and fragile electronic components. This probably isn't the best first project for people that have no familiarity with this kind of stuff. Once you have it assembled, you have to contend with the not particularly easy task of installing an OS and games and then tinkering with the settings both within Emulation Station and RetroArch. Having to deal with third-party software like Paragon or a full-blown Linux installation once again means this is not a project for someone that is brand new to all of these things. And there are a few other alternatives, to getting software, and ROMs onto the device, but that's really beyond the scope of this, and I think it's more difficult than what I've outlined here already. Now, reading and watching the multitude of tutorials out there can make this project doable for almost anyone. I don't want to discourage people from giving the Odroid Go Advance a try, but what I do want to make clear is that it is a very different proposition from buying a fully assembled portable system where all you need to do is pop an SD card into a reader on a Windows computer to simply transfer files. This is much more for someone who wants to learn a little bit about the hardware, software, OSes, and detailed settings. Just a few final things as we finish up here. First, let's discuss battery life. The specs say the battery should last roughly 10 hours. Does it last that long? Well, in my experience, it actually lasts longer than that. So that's a huge plus for this device. The other thing that I would be remiss if I didn't talk about is that if you install any of the OSes on here, there are going to be an awful lot of settings that you have the option to tweak if you don't want to use things as they're set by default. So you can change things like the pixel aspect ratio, you can change what filters are used, maybe make some slight tweaks to resolution, and things like that. Really, it's going to be all about customization, so you can basically make it do whatever you want within its limitations. Would I recommend an Odroid Go Advance? Well, sure, I had a lot of fun putting it together. And after I got the software kinks ironed out, I also had a lot of fun testing it to see just how far you could push this somewhat humble hardware. If you're the type of person that loves Raspberry Pis or other single-board computers, tinkering around with various OSes and seeing what you can make it do, then this is going to be right up your alley. So as long as you're aware of what the challenges will be going into this, then I heartily recommend it, as long as you think you can handle it or learn how to handle it. And we have drawn to the close of another video, my friends. Are you convinced? What other questions do you have about the Odroid Go Advance? Feel free to ask away in the comments section below. Except for questions about, where to find BIOS and ROM files. Because I don't know where you get those things. If only there was some type of engine designed for searching based on things you type into it. With that, I will say thanks for watching, and see me later.